All right, my friends, let's talk about goal setting for the new year. Now, for those of you who, at the end of November, we're in the last week of November, and Christmas is only 4 weeks away. For those of you who are resisting Christmas, you are going to find this episode a little bit challenging because I'm asking you to think even further ahead than 4 weeks' time. I want you thinking about the new year. I want you thinking 6 weeks ahead. One of the things I encourage within Inside Be the First for my clients is we don't wait for January to get started on our our New Year goals. We don't wait for the new year as if we're going to suddenly have a burst of enthusiasm and motivation and energy to do hard things. We're not waiting for January to come to get started. One of the really important things I teach is that we start now. As soon as we hit the end of November, we hit the beginning of December, we want to start thinking ahead to those goals. This has been a game changer for me. I used to be, perhaps like you, like so many people, I'd be like at the end of the year, I'd be there on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, only then starting to think about my New Year's resolutions. I'm a fan. I like New Year's resolutions. But for you, if you're not a New Year's resolutions person, then just imagine and think about it in terms of setting your goals for the new year. So I used to be the person who would do that at the end of December, beginning of January. And then what I realized was how long it took me to get going in the new year. Like January, it's the sort of the hangover from Christmas, and I don't mean necessarily an alcoholic hangover, I just mean sort of after the excitement and the lights and the festivities and the being around other people and the being more relaxed and taking your foot off the pedal. After all of that, and you go into January, and if you're in the UK, it tends to be quite bleak and quite cold, quite wet, and certainly very dark, right? That is literally, for me anyway, and I suspect it's the same for you, the least conducive to me feeling like, yeah, let's go, it's the new year, I'm ready to tackle all these new goals, right? So instead of waiting for the beginning of January, when we know the beginning of January takes us a while to get started, let's get going now. Let's start to think about it now with the kind of end of year energy that you have, with the energy of finishing strong, which is something I really encourage inside Be the First. We don't taper off at the end of the year, we finish strong. So hopefully that sets some context and I've got you on board with thinking about goal setting for the next year. So depending on when you listen to this, at the time of recording, that next year is 2026. Now, this isn't a goal setting session. I might do another episode more specifically to give you an overview about setting your goals. This is speaking specifically, as I said, to a word that keeps coming up inside Be the First when my clients talk about what they're going to do next year. And that word is focus. So I have one client who said, yes, I'm going to focus on building relationships in the first 6 months in the next year. Another client who said, yeah, I'm going to focus on increasing my visibility. Another client said, yes, I'm going to focus on showcasing my value. So focus is the word I want to really sort of zoom in on and show you and get you to look at so that you can see the impact that such an innocuous, seemingly innocent word is having on your ability to progress, is having on the speed at which you progress and achieve your goals. It's a big one. Now, first of all, for context, those 3 things that I've given as an example that my clients were talking about, so building relationships, and because I coach Black lawyers, it's building relationships, or Black professionals, even building relationships with people who are different to you or don't look like you. I teach increasing your visibility, and I teach increasing showcasing your value. So those 3 examples I gave you are 3 of the 5 core skills that I teach you inside Be the First. So when you join, and I certainly am going to be encouraging you to be thinking about, yes, we are 5 weeks out from the end of the year, really thinking about joining Be the First in January. But to start in January, right? I'm actually enrolling for that January class at the beginning of December. That's why doing this episode, talking to this topic, is so important right now. It's why I want to get you thinking about your goals right now, because the success you want in the new year, starting in January, that success starts with a decision made this year, made now. So I'm going to be giving you an opportunity to make that decision, to think about that decision, to ask me all the questions and clear up any confusion you might have about that decision and whether it's right for you. I'm going to be inviting you to do that over the coming weeks. So pay attention to this. Don't think, oh, I'll put this off till later in the year, till after Christmas. Now is the time to think about it. Success in 2026 starts in 2025, okay? So I was just telling you about those 3 examples I've given you: relationships, visibility, and value, that are 3 of the 5 core skills that you learn inside Be the First. And I was explaining how my clients are making, or they made the attempt of setting their goal for next year using this word focus. I'm going to focus on visibility. I'm going to focus on value. I'm going to focus on relationships. Now, is this you? I want to invite you to pause for a moment and reflect. When you plan for something, when there is something you know you need to do, are you using the word focus as a substitute for the actual result that you need to create? Allow me to explain. When you use the word focus, and that is your goal, I'm going to focus on increasing my visibility, what that does is communicate to your brain that the work is to be thinking about your visibility. The work is to be prioritizing visibility. So when there are other things that come up, or other maybe distractions or other directions you could go, or things that you could be working on, your brain knows it's like, okay, I'm focusing on visibility, so I'm going to prioritize that over something else. What's wrong with that? I hear you say. What's wrong with having something be front of mind so you're thinking about it and having it be the thing that you prioritize? Here's what I want you to see. When your goal is to focus on something over a period of, say, let's 6 months, all you're really doing is saying, I'm going to be working on that thing. I'm going to be working on my visibility. And the problem with working on your visibility, working on something, because you've chosen to focus on it, the problem is you can get to the end of 6 months and be no further along. You can get to the end of 6 months and done a whole lot of things and not actually have a concrete result to show for it. Or if you do have a concrete result to show for it, that result is way below or way behind or way less than what you are actually capable of. Here's a great example, just from real life, to illustrate this. When I was a when I was a school kid, right, at my secondary school, and I remember working really hard for my A-levels. I also applied, actually, when I was at Cambridge, working really hard for my degree. I did a history degree, right? And I remember, and I have always been a hard worker. I know so many of you will relate to this, and there's all sorts of things that lie behind that or beneath that, like that needing and feeling that I had to work really hard. And of course, a thought that I inherited from my grandparents and from my parents. It's like, you have to work twice as hard. Maybe this is familiar to you too. So I was no stranger to hard work. I'm still no stranger to hard work. I work very hard. But here's the problem, and it took me quite a long time to realize it. You can be working extremely hard at something, but not actually produce the result you need to achieve the goal. Take, for example, so I said I studied history, right, for my degree. I could spend hours and hours, work all day into the early hours, reading my textbooks, looking at past papers, doing lots of research and going over my lecture notes, attending lectures, working really hard. That would be me focusing on studying for my degree, like focusing on my subject. But me spending all of that time focusing on history is not the same as me being able to walk into an exam and answer those questions well enough or to a high enough standard to get an excellent result. Right? So what that means is at the end of, let's say, 6 months of working really hard, focusing on my subject, I could come out and still not be able to pass an exam. Because what happens is our brains think, oh, there's so many different ways I can be focusing on it. I can just be thinking about it. Or, yeah, I worked really hard with my head down, and that was me focusing on it. So the standard of activity, of engagement, that comes with the desire or the goal of focusing on something is much lower than the standard of actually achieving a result. Here's what I mean by that. A different if I'd set, using again this history example, I quite like this one. If my goal for 6 months had been, I'm going to come out like certain with a 2-1, right? Then that creates a very different relationship with my goal than if I say I'm going to spend 6 months focusing on my history. Okay, let me bring it back to you and back to my clients. And this is what I said to my client who wanted to focus on relationships. If you spend 6 months focusing on relationships, if that is your goal, you can get to the end of 6 months and you've ticked off that goal. You've focused on relationships. You spent a lot of time thinking about them. Maybe there were times when you could have done something else and you decided to go to the networking event. Great. But at the end of 6 months, what can you actually measure? What did you actually produce? What did you actually create in terms of a tangible result that puts you in a completely different place 6 months from now than you were before? So hopefully you can really understand the difference. And to help you do that, here's what I want to recommend as being a much more effective process for you, or set of words for you, or a way of setting your goals for the next year. Is going to be so much more effective because it's going to mean you get to work to produce an actual result at the end of that 6 month period. As an aside, by the way, I keep referring to 6 months because 6 months is what I teach is it is the sweet spot for you in terms of goal setting. A year is quite a long time to work on a goal, right? You always want to have the 6 month goal or 6 month version of that longer term goal, because a year means you will probably, quite likely, quite possibly spend the first quarter, the first half, just putting off doing any actual work towards that goal, or delaying it, or going slowly. There isn't any urgency when you allow yourself a year. If we were to say 3 months, what I feel with 3 months is it can be useful as a time frame for setting micro goals, right? Like milestones that will get you to your bigger goal. But 3 months for me isn't long enough for you to really transform, to really develop a skill and hone that skill and be applying it and implementing it and getting the results from it. So that's why I always talk about 6 months. And that's why when you join Be the First, this is one of the first things we'll do is we'll get really clear on your 6 month goal. It is a 6 month program for that reason. Okay, so I was going to offer you the alternative. Why you want to stay away from the goal of focusing on your career or on a particular skill set or particular area you want to develop. Shy away or move away from focusing on it and move towards like the articulating the results you want to create. So instead of what you want to focus on, it's about the results you want to create. Here's what I mean by that. Here's an example. Let's say you were thinking, I'm going to focus on visibility. Okay, that's what you're focusing on. I want to encourage you to say, in the next 6 months or 6 months from now, I'm going to create the result of 10xing my visibility. This is what we do inside Be the First. We talk about 10xing your visibility, right? That means taking your visibility as it is now, understanding where your visibility is now, and challenging yourself to become 10 times more visible. I know, I use the word challenge because it is a challenge. That's why you want to be inside Be the First, because so many of you struggle with visibility. You struggle with like the fear of exposure from being visible. You struggle with what it might mean if you were on social media and the fear around that and what other people might say and the judgment, right? You would much rather be doing the hard work and not be having to be visible. So it will feel like a challenge, but that's why you're inside Be the First. So I can support you. Remember, my job is to challenge you and to support you. And I do that in equal measure inside the program, which is why you get those results, my friend. It's why you end up 6 months into the program, like at the end of the 6 month program, so much further along, so much closer to your goal, or having achieved your goal, right? Because I'm willing to challenge you, hold you accountable, but support you every step of the way. So yes, 10xing your visibility is challenging. But here's why this is so important to articulate at the beginning when you're setting your goal. The minute you actually put into words, okay, I'm going to 10x my visibility, I'm going to create the result of being 10 times more visible in 6 months, that feeling it creates in you of nervousness, of fear even about what that will mean, of what that's going to be like, what it might require of you to 10x your visibility, that feeling is creating energy to move you forwards to the goal. It means you are properly engaged with the goal itself. You are properly taking on board and committing to doing the work to achieve that result. It's a very different feeling to say I'm going to be 10 times more visible 6 months from now than to say I'm going to focus on my visibility for the next 6 months. Can you hear how different that is? Focusing on your visibility, you can stay comfortable. It's something that you can kind of fit in, or you can do on days that you feel like it, or days when you have the time. Saying, I'm going to 10x my visibility creates discomfort in the moment. It's like, oh my gosh, if I say that, like if I'm saying that's my goal, that means I'm going to have to do it. That means I'm going to have to do the work. That means I'm going to have to do what I don't want to do, what makes me feel uncomfortable. And I want to offer that the more willing you are to do the work, to feel uncomfortable but keep going in spite of that discomfort, and the more willing you are to hold yourself accountable to a goal that you have set to yourself, a tangible, measurable goal, a result that you have articulated, the more willing you are to do that, the faster you will progress, the quicker you will achieve that promotion or whatever your progression goal is. I promise you. And I don't think I have to convince you of that. I think you can see the difference. I want to think about focusing as kind of being in the comfort blanket of, right? It's still within your comfort zone to focus, right? Setting a specific result that you are planning to achieve, it's throwing off the comfort blanket and saying, okay, that's it, I'm going to go for it. So hopefully from that you can really hear the difference. Here's how I want to invite you to do that, because one of the most obvious questions to follow on from this is, okay, well, how do I do it, Caroline? Like, how do I set my goal, my 6-month goals for 2026, or for whenever you're listening to this, for the coming year? How do I do that? How do I phrase my goal in terms of the result I want to create? Now, obviously, I've given you the example of visibility, so let's stick with that one. So what I want to offer, whatever your goal is, you ask yourself this question, and I've called it in my notes, and this is how I'm going to start talking about it inside Be the First. I think it's very useful. I'm just going to call it the results test, okay? So whatever it is, as you're writing down your goals and thinking about what you want to achieve, what you want to do is put your goals through the results test. And the results test is really, really simple. It's just a simple question that you ask yourself. And that question is, 6 months from now, how will I know I have focused on whatever it is that you thought you wanted to focus on? So in the case of my client who wanted to focus on visibility, or the one who wanted to focus on value, the questions they need to ask themselves are, how will I know 6 months from now that I have focused on visibility? Or how will I know 6 months from now that I have focused on showcasing more of my value? And I want to challenge you to take time to answer that question. And here are some prompts to help you answer that question. How will I know? First of all, prompt number 1, how will I think differently? Prompt number 2, how will I feel different 6 months from now? Prompt number 3, what will I be doing differently 6 months from now that will show that I focused on my visibility, for example? Yeah. And what will be different circumstantially? Like, how will the circumstances be different 6 months from now? Like, what will actually be true 6 months from now? All of those prompts, those are just 4 simple prompts for you to think about that are going to help you answer the question, how will I know I've focused on my visibility, to use that same example, for 6 months? So what you can hear here is I'm inviting you to start, if that feels easy, start with the word focus. And it's just occurred to me, actually, your word might not be focus, it might be work on. That's another one. Like, let's catch that. Are you thinking, yeah, in the first 6 months of the year or next year, I'm going to work on my subject matter expertise, or I'm going to work on my implementing feedback? So if you're telling yourself, I'm going to focus on, or I'm going to work on, right? It's okay to start there, but then run it through this results test that I have just walked you through. So that one question, how will I know 6 months from now that I have worked on this, that I have focused on this? And then you use those 4 prompts that I've just given you to help you answer that question, right? To help ensure so that it passes the results test. Okay, so the results to those prompts, the answers you come up with, will give you the result that needs to be your goal for the coming 6 months. Yeah, does that make sense? So I want to walk you through an example, but this time let's take building relationships. Yeah, let's say your brain you know that building relationships is something you work on. Inside Be the First, you will know exactly what it is you need to focus on, because we look at that, right at the beginning of the program. We look at what your goal is, and we look at those 5 core skills that I teach you, and I invite you to choose 3 of them to really pay attention to and prioritize as part of the program. So let's take the skill of building relationships, right? Let's say you're thinking, okay, it's come up in Be the First, or it's come up in my evaluation or in my feedback that relationships is where I need to focus or what I need to work on. Here's what I want to invite you to do. Put it through the results test. So you ask yourself the question, how will I know I've worked on my relationships? How will I know I've focused on relationships for the next 6 months? Like, what will be going on 6 months from now to tell me that I was successful in focusing on and working on my relationships? Here's like how I would answer that question just on behalf of a hypothetical client, or it may even be an actual client. I've taken different elements from different clients on this one. So the first question or prompt I gave you to help you answer that question or answer that results test that I gave you, the first thing I said was, how will you be thinking differently? So you could be thinking 6 months from now, you could have the thought, well, I can connect with anyone. Right now, you might have the thought, well, I can't connect with people who are so different to me. I can't connect, or I find it really hard to network with or speak to or approach people who don't look like me. That might be your thought right now. 6 months from now, how you'll know you worked on that, focused on that, the result you create could be that you think, wow, I can connect with anyone. Imagine if that became then your goal for your 6 months. My goal is to be able to connect with anyone. Can you see the difference and how much that activates you, gets you taking action, gets you thinking about, okay, how do I get to that result of being able to connect with anyone? Very different to, I'm going to focus on relationships. Like, you could plan to focus on relationships and just go to a few networking events and think, I've done it, I focused on relationships. But if you set the goal as, okay, in 6 months' time, I want to be able to believe about myself. I want to have the thought about myself that I can connect, the word focus, you see, it sneaks in. Watch out for it. If you had the thought about yourself, I can connect with anyone, it completely changes your approach. It completely changes like how you get to work and the need to get to work. So that's at the thinking level. It's a great way of identifying the results you want to create at the thinking level, like in your brain, the thoughts you have. What about the feeling level? That was another prompt I gave you. How will you be feeling differently 6 months from now as a result of focusing on your relationships or working on them? And the feeling I want to offer could, as an example, is you will feel connected. Maybe you'll feel supported. Maybe you'll feel trusted. What if that were your goal? Your goal 6 months into 2026 was to feel connected and trusted and supported. Think about how differently you will show up to building relationships and to networking if you're that specific about the goal, if you're that clear about the results you are trying to create. Yeah, very differently. Then you're not just going, oh, well, I went to 3 networking events in these, or I went to 1 networking event a month. That sounds like a reasonable amount of work, doesn't it? It sounds like someone who's focusing on building relationships. But imagine what else you would do if your goal was, in 6 months' time, I want to feel connected, supported, and trusted. And I would, even if you could take that even better and say by who, right? By the partners in my group, or by the partners in other offices, or by certain clients. Like if you can be even more specific, then wow, think how empowering that is to have that clear goal as expressed as a result that you are going to go out and create. I think going to go out and create it is a really good way of thinking of the difference between focusing, right, and creating results. It's literally, if you're talking in terms of results, you go and create them. Versus focusing, it's like you stay here and you sort of dance around the subject or the topic. You can do it comfortably from your chair type thing. Whereas you've got to get off the sofa and go get it if what you want is to feel connected and supported and trusted. It completely changes your game plan when that's what you're going for. And then the third prompt I gave you was, what kind of actions will you be taking 6 months from now? Like, what will be the things that you do that show you have been focusing on relationships or show you've been working hard at them? And again, remember, these prompts are to help you turn, I'm going to focus on this and I'm going to work hard on this, into a tangible result that you can set as your goal and go for. This is what we're doing. So that third prompt I gave you, what kind of actions would you be taking or will you be taking that would demonstrate that you've focused on, worked on relationships? To use this example, stay with that example. Here's what I want to offer as examples of that types of actions. Number one, spending X number of hours a week nurturing existing relationships. So for example, spending 1 or 2 hours a week nurturing existing relationships. That could be existing client files. It's not like you would necessarily find 2 extra hours, but you can quantify what you are doing. So I'm spending X number of hours a week nurturing existing relationships internally, let's say. I'm spending X hours a week nurturing existing relationships externally. I'm adding 10 new contacts a week. I am always following, like I have a rule that I always follow up on a network meeting or a relationship conversation. I always follow up within 24 hours. Like, this is what I'm doing. So 6 months from now, this is how I know that I have worked on my relationship building, is because this is what I'm doing. This is like who I am now. This is how I operate. Yeah. Another example I gave you was, 6 months from now, I've actually got a database of connections that I keep updated, and I can open it up at any time and see my network, see where I am, see even like the last time I met that person, see the people on that list who I still want to connect with. Like, I've got this database, and I check that database once a week, or I update it once a week, for example. And then lastly, I love this one, and I encourage clients to do this. That's like to have a relationship tier system. Of course, like, our networks can be huge, especially when you allow for social media, when you allow for everybody you know. So one of the things that worked really well for one of my clients was like have a tier system, like tier 1, where she nurtures like the relationships she nurtures more frequently, like she reaches out to them more frequently. Tier 2 relationships less frequently. Tier 3 relationships even less frequently. That's just an example of the type of thing that would show 6 months from now that you have focused on. You have worked in a way that is proactive, and you've moved forward and you've got to work. You've worked on your relationships. Okay? So what I've given you, actually, I still need to give you the answer to the fourth prompt, an example of an answer to the fourth prompt, which is what will be circumstantially different. In other words, what will be different, like that people will be able to observe or see, what will be true 6 months from now that isn't true now. So examples of this, I wrote 100 new external relationships started or connections made. Like 6 months from now, what would that mean? I don't know, 15 connection requests a week or something. I don't know what that maths was like. But for example, 100 new external relationships or connections like made or started. Like, that could be circumstantially different. So what I was thinking about there, I was thinking about my LinkedIn following, and I have 6,500 followers on LinkedIn. So within 6 months of next year, that I absolutely want that to be at 7,000. So for me, it's going to be, I've got 500 new external connections made within that period. Other examples, I have deepened 10 existing relationships. I have developed 5 new internal relationships. So there were 5 new people now I have relationships with internally within my organization, right, that I didn't have before. That's a different circumstance. My confidence level has gone from a 5 out of 10, it's now an 8 out of 10 when it comes to speaking with people who I don't know, right? Or people who don't look like me. Can you hear those very tangible, measurable results, right, that you would see if you had been committed to working on your relationships for 6 months? So what we want to do is we want to take the desire, the understanding and the motivation to work on your relationships, and we want to run that through that results test and convert the focus and the desire to work hard on or work towards. We want to take that wishy-washy language and we want to turn it into real, tangible, measurable results that you are going for. By the way, I gave you so many examples of what could be like what working on your relationships, or focusing on your relationships could be expressed as a tangible result. Don't use that against you. It doesn't mean you need all of those. I just wanted to give you so many examples you could never turn around to me and say, Caroline, I didn't really know how to make this a result. I didn't really know how to express the goal. I've given you so many. Yeah, you can choose any one or more of the examples that I have given you and use those to rephrase, re-articulate your goal so that in the next few weeks, you can already start moving towards it, but come the end of June 2026, you can look and say, wow, look how I'm thinking differently. This is what I've got to show for 6 months of focusing on and working hard on. I'm thinking differently, I'm feeling differently, I'm acting differently. The circumstances are completely different. My relationships are in a completely different place now. Here's why this is important. The more lawyers, the more of you I speak to and I follow your progress, what I want to offer is you're taking too long to progress. And I think that is happening. I've seen that happening inside Be The First, where you're allowing yourself so much time to progress. Now, this isn't about you putting extra pressure on yourself, trying to get yourself to work harder, do more hours, and any suggestion that what you're doing and the rate at which you're progressing isn't enough. What it is to just show you actually how your commitment to the goal, the way you articulate the goal, the way you communicate with yourself about what you want to achieve sets you up for, it determines and heavily impacts, I won't say it dictates, but it hugely impacts the speed at which you do progress. And it is literally the phrasing of the goal that changes. It's not you needing to work harder. It just means that when you phrase the goal as something that is a result you have to measure 6 months from now, you will work smarter. And that's what I want to encourage more of. Less of the working harder and harder to get where you want and more of the working smarter. And the way you do that is to think, what's the result I need to create? It's going to be really powerful for those of you who are going for partnership and you know there's those criteria that you need to meet. It's like a business case. Don't set your goal to be, I'm working on my business case. Your goal has to be, I have my business case and here's what's in it. Without knowing the detail of the actual case, it's going to cover X, Y, and Z. 6 months from now, I will be holding my business case in my hand, if you actually write anything out and have it physically anymore. Or I will have a complete business case 6 months from now. That's how you express the goal. You don't say, I'm working on my business case. Yeah, I hear so many of you doing that. And that is what slows you down. That is why week after week after week, I'm coaching you and you're saying, yeah, I still need to do that. I still need to have time, find time to work on my business case. Yeah. So catch yourself when you're talking about working on something. Catch yourself when you're talking about focusing on something, right? And run it through the results test. Ask yourself, how will I know what will be different 6 months from now? Answer that question and make that your goal. Now, what this will do is bring up discomfort for you. I mentioned this earlier and I want to come back to it because I don't want the feeling of committing to creating a result 6 months from now. I don't want you to run away from that feeling. I want you to invite that feeling in, sit with that feeling, allow the discomfort to be in your body. You will learn that discomfort, it's just a feeling, it's just a vibration. It will not harm you, okay? I want you to be able to sit with that. I also want you to, I was going to say welcome it. It might be quite hard if you're resisting it to move so quickly to welcoming it. But what I would like you to do is acknowledge or see or even allow for the possibility, if that's as much as you can access right now, that feeling is exactly what will move you forward to achieving that goal. It's exactly what you need. It will generate the activity and the action, the motivation and the commitment that is necessary to achieve your goal. Yeah? So don't run away from the discomfort if you felt that. If you're sitting and you're looking at your goals for next year and it feels uncomfortable, to say, I am going to, next year, okay, I'm going to focus on my visibility, and here's what that means. It means 6 months from now, I'm going to be 10 times more visible, right? Feel that feeling in your body of discomfort and stay with it. Don't run away with it. I want you to try it on. And most importantly, I want you to know that you don't have to do this alone. I said at the beginning that this is all about getting you ready for 2026. I want 2026 to be your best year yet. And I would love to support you and challenge you and be the one to walk you every step of the way in achieving that. So I'm going to be inviting you to join Be the First. Join the January cohort. We meet as a group, I coach you individually, you learn as a group, right? And we focus on building those 5 core skills, and I coach you on everything that comes up along the way as you learn to really take control of your time, change your relationship with time. Right now, you think and feel like time is something out of your control. Well, I teach you time control, and we change all of that. So that's one of the skills that you will learn, is how to be in control of your time. You'll learn how to receive and implement feedback. You're going to learn how to build relationships with people who are different to you. You're going to learn how to 10x your visibility, and you're going to learn how to showcase your value so you can show them how valuable you are. And all of this are going to be the core essentials, the core progression things that, when you work through them, are going to move you so quickly and effectively to achieving your goal. And I want to support you in doing that. As you've heard today, it's going to involve some comfort, but you're not alone. Being inside that program, you're going to be with other like-minded mid to senior level Black lawyers who are also progressing their career, who are also facing these challenges, who also have these doubts and uncertainties, who are also thinking about working on their career or focusing on their career or focusing on a particular aspect that they know they need to develop. Like so many of you are doing that, and I want to invite you all to join Be the First, and let me support you to get crystal clear on what those goals are, to hold you accountable to achieving those goals, but doing so in the most loving and supportive way, so you always feel safe, so you always feel supported, and so that you always make progress. All right, so the dates to pay attention to, remember, we may be in the last week of November, but now is the best time. It's the most important time to set yourself up for success in 2026. So here are the key dates. The 10th of December is when I will open enrollment for the January 2026 class. So make a note of that in your diary. I will be sending emails and doing lots of posts in the run up to that date, but I want you to pay attention to that date now. I've included a link in the notes underneath this video or underneath this podcast. I've included a link to the program page where you will learn and read about what we do in the program and what we cover and what the framework is. And if you have any questions, I want to invite you to reach out to me. You can email me, you can message me directly on LinkedIn or on Instagram or on TikTok. If you follow me on TikTok, I'm in all the places, or even on YouTube, because this will be you'll be available to watch this video in YouTube. So just reach out to me, DM me, or add in the comments if you have any questions at all about Be the First and why Be the First is the program for you. If you want to progress in the next 6 to 12 months, my friend, this is the program you want to be in. I can't wait to welcome you in. I'm so looking forward to working with you. That's it for now. I'll be back this time next week to talk more on getting you ready for 2026, talking more on how I can help you progress and make it the best year yet. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.